Thank you, Damesha, for coming on. Realize how busy you are, so appreciate you coming on to the show. But I guess um, first question is just around, your sort of bio is talent advisor and also leadership purpose alchemist. How has that come about? I guess, yeah, just share for some of the listeners, watchers, what your background is and how you got into the space of what you're doing now, which is helping so many leaders with the aspect of burnout or whatever it might be.
Yes, no, thank you. Great question. I love the opening question. And you are busy yourself, so I appreciate you carving out time for me. To answer your question, just kind of share a little bit about my background because I think that'll help, the audience kind of understand my journey. But I was a former head of talent, VP of talent. We have tons of names, people in that space know. We're either HR leaders, talent leaders. So
Yeah.
but I was the head of talent for many companies and have scaled early and growth stage startups and have seen so many things firsthand. I had a lot of firsthand imprints, including the imprint of my own experience. And
Hmm.
I understood leaders who really struggle to, not just lead themselves, but lead others,
Hmm.
because they
Hmm.
weren't leading themselves. And so I got to see burnout firsthand, people who were out of alignment, and all these things. And I think as a former, track and field athlete, I understood how important alignment is, in
Yeah.
order to do
Yeah.
anything. And so, as an athlete, you're so in your body, and you're so in tune with your body and your mind. But a lot of times we're not always in tune with our soul. And so
Yeah.
there's, misalignment there. And so you see this, throughout all leaders. And so what I did is I kind of stepped away because I was at a point where I felt like, I've done this so many times, and I'm like, what else does my creator want me to do? Like, how does he want me to
Hmm.
show up in the world
Hmm.
and use the gifts that he bestowed upon me? And I call my
Hmm.
creator God, and I realized I wasn't tapping into any of them. And I do believe that, I call myself a leadership purpose alchemist because I believe our purposes aren't static. It's not one destination that we get to. We have multiple purposes in our life, and sometimes our purpose is us. In order
Yeah.
for us to heal, to show up, understand why we're here or what we're doing so we can show up in a fuller capacity. Because a lot of us are leading from a more, what I like to call fragmented, version of ourself. And so
Yeah.
what I, what I did is I actually took time off, which I've never done. And so I used to leave a company on a Friday and start on a Monday, every company. And I finally was like, I need to take time to understand why I'm here and how he wants me to show up more fully. And so I started with
Yeah.
myself and went on a journey. I got my coaching certification through the Jay Shetty Coaching Certification School. I
Yeah.
started just sharing, online. And he wanted me, what I heard from my higher powers to show up messy,
Yeah.
because I think a lot of times we want to show up in this perfect package. And that is not how you build. You build through authenticity. And so I showed all my fumbles. I mean, my first website was horrible, but I didn't care. I was so proud. I was like, I built that. So, and then the second one was better, and then the third one was better, and I got better, but people got to see me fumble. There were so many people who judged my beginning stages. I'm like, I'm only on page 2. I go, but I bet you by the time I get to page 50, you ain't gonna be laughing.
Yeah. But that build in public whole, that hashtag build in public, it's
Yeah,
massive in the startup world.
it
Oh,
is.
it's so, I don't know. It's difficult for especially founders, leaders to get their head around. I'm trying even myself to get into more of that. But like you said, especially with Instagram, you sort of are trying to come and be perfect, right? So it's interesting that you just led with that straight away.
No, well, and I think that is the differentiator, because I watch and, I'll just use the coaches that I, kind of started with. I watched a lot of them, develop their perfect Instagram post and, their color schemes, and they focus so heavily on the outer, and not the messaging and, tapping into why they were even doing it. And I think when your why
Yeah.
is not big enough and you're not attached to that, like you're so consumed by all the external stuff and the validation that comes along with, your highlight reel on Instagram. I'm not really
Yeah.
attached to that. Never have been.
Yeah.
And so I think
Yeah.
that's the differentiator. Like I mean, not to be blunt, but I could care too, like I could give two shits
Yeah.
about what
Yeah.
I think of it, honestly. And I actually
Yeah.
mean that because the only person I care about is my creator, and
Yeah.
if I'm
Yeah.
showing up in my fullest capacity and doing what he asked me to do, because someone
Yeah.
else's, I guess, definition of success or what I should be doing is not what I believe I should be doing.
No,
So,
it's different.
and I think that's the difference. I find that the creators or coaches or whatever, they show up in a way trying to be perfect, and it comes off inauthentic. People can feel that. And so it's so important to show up like it's okay to make mistakes and then own it. Like I owned my first website sucked. I owned my second one even sucked a little bit. But from there I got my messaging down. I studied marketing, and I studied all these things that helped me show up fuller as I went along. And I think it's so important to build in public, and show that
Yeah.
it's okay to make mistakes, because it not only shows that the audience that you're human, the people who are following you, but also the people that you're leading, your team, and allows them to also
Yeah.
make mistakes and know that, hey, our founder just made, a mistake too. Like when you are trying to be perfect, everyone around you kind of feels that vibration, and then they're not able to show up in their full capacity. You want people to show up in their full capacity. That's when magic happens.
Yeah. I mean, I'm fascinated by all this. Super interested, and you've used, and I might be butchering this, but
No.
and I think it was on one of our calls where it's about leading not from survival mode and like
Yeah.
leading from is it purpose, like leading from purpose and
Well, and
transitioning basically
thriving.
out of that survival mode. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And thriving, but the only
Yeah.
way that you're able to make that shift is by understanding yourself. You have to be able
Yeah.
to lead yourself first. And I think
Yeah.
that's the biggest misconception. A lot of leaders, I'm sure you've seen them in your career, they have been thrusted into leadership roles without having, like
Yeah.
any training, any guidance, and really your best guidance comes from inside, because all the answers have been placed inside of us from our creator. And
Yeah.
we don't tap into that because we're doing everything externally. If you think about leadership, I'll just use tech, for instance. Everything
Yeah.
is run off of data and analytics, it's like, and all of your, KPIs and et cetera, right? Well, that's wonderful. And we do need that, especially investors, but
Yeah.
we also need to understand ourselves, so then we can have a lot more empathy and compassion for others and be able to
Mm.
see them. If you can't even see yourself, you can't
Yeah.
fully see others.
No. And it's, I think we see it a lot with where, you mentioned about that transition is many people are trying to get to a new destination, but maybe don't even understand or have that self-awareness that that person that they are currently needs to level
Yes.
up or needs to change.
Yeah,
Yeah. Just
exactly.
to even achieve that. And I think for
Exactly.
sure, even with us here at Click and getting us from, just idea to raising venture capital, I personally needed to, I'm not the same person, and still trying to improve. But from your sort of just years of experience and years of seeing leaders at these, top, huge startups like Substack, etc., what would you say are the biggest things that or the best things you've seen leaders introduce perhaps for themselves, for the culture, for the team, that really does move the needle rather than just saying, hey, I'm going to now bring this habit in? Like, what have you seen that really was like a moment where it clicked maybe in a different organization?
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that because, regardless of your role, like as the company evolves, and every company evolves, good or bad, right? And, you need to continue to evolve as a leader in order to lead at that level. So if you start
Yeah.
off with seed money and it's like, maybe $1 million at seed or a little under that, that's a completely different company than when you raise like 10 million, And so like all of that requires you to first look at yourself. So I think the
Yeah.
first the first thing that leaders should be doing is first starting with themselves. Because
Yeah.
there's so a lot of what I have found a lot of leaders focus on is the culture. You know, you hear that word a lot, like, oh, I want the culture to be this. The culture is based on the people that you hire. So it is going to be established based on who you hire. You don't have to
Yeah.
have this long list of, core values. I mean, it's great to start with that because maybe you can dream about what the company's going to be, but it's going to be who you hire. And so I think the very first thing is what I have seen great leaders do is start with themselves. And they
Yeah.
realize their shortcomings, like where the gap is in
Yeah.
their leadership, and then they help fill that gap. Whether it's
Yeah.
hiring people who have done what they haven't been able to do, hiring leaders who are smarter than them in whatever capacity, but then also having humility to hire a coach, because no one
Yeah.
does this alone. I don't care what anyone says, they can pretend they've done it alone. They have not done it alone. So it is so important to, get with the coach. Like, where's your shortcomings? Okay, maybe your shortcomings is in health. Okay, reach out to Ben. you know like, maybe it's like getting your physical together. Seriously, like you
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
you can't be like drinking heavy and doing all that and leading $100
Totally.
million company. Like you can't show
Absolutely.
up to work drunk. You know what I mean? Like you have to show up in that version. And I think that's the
Yeah.
biggest gap that I have seen, where leaders just fight it. And I see so many. I'll give you a great
Yeah.
example, like where I had a founder, won't name the names of course, but he wanted to meet every single candidate. Before we hire them, I want to talk to every single candidate. Now I know, at doing this 100 times over now, that's only going to scale up to a certain point.
Yeah.
Like, you have to relinquish trust, you have to relinquish
And
control,
control.
and you have to allow people to do their job without you micromanaging. And
Yeah.
it scaled up to a certain point, and then it got to a point where we were losing candidates because he had no availability. And I said, well, you know
Yeah.
what? That's because your role is to go do CEO things.
Yeah. It's true. I mean, the coach thing is is for sure great advice. I mean, we're aiming obviously to empower more coaches, but those coaches also need coaches because they're leading their business. And I think for sure when we see coaches that launch on Click, whether it be they've launched an app or just the digital storefront, they have teams. Like they're at that stage, even if they're not making that much money, they've already invested in the notion that it's not about self-made millionaire by themselves. It just doesn't exist, like you said. But I guess you've transitioned. Or I don't know if you've transitioned, but since we've connected, you're online. So how did that come about? Like from a standpoint of now, Leadership Garden and all the content you're putting out and creating that community and the business. How did that come about?
Well, it was definitely not all at once. So let me be completely honest there. Like, it was in stages, and I started with content because right now, and I'm sure, I don't know, coaches on Click probably feel the same thing. It is very challenging to build authority while you're building, and like what I found, what helped me was I went straight for authority first. And so I was like, let me show who I am, again, show up messy, but also like get my messaging across. And it took people a while, because even I was still learning what my messaging was. But that
Yeah.
really helped me because I showed up online like, I mean, a hose, like I was like a fire hose, so
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna do all forms of content, from short form, video, but it came in stages. I didn't do everything at once. And I think that's the difference. People do everything at once, they get very overwhelmed. I wanted to do it in
Yeah.
stages. And so I went from short form to live to, online. I have a podcast, Sunday Soul Day. And then I
Yeah.
showed up long form. And I now write on Substack. I was the former head of talent there, so it's full
Yeah.
circle for me to join there and write there. But I did all of that because while I was building, I wanted to also be building my authority and my voice. Your voice is so important in all of this, and I think
Yeah.
we forget that. You have to remember your voice throughout all of this. And so, as I was building, I tried different platforms. I tried a bunch. I'm not going to name them all, but I tried a bunch. And they just didn't work. And when you reached out to me, I just love the simplicity of Click. I love the support
Mm.
that Click provided that a lot of other platforms didn't provide. They say they provide, but they don't. And so
Yeah.
your team actually provides it. So I was very grateful for that. And, that's the challenge, as you're building that authority is also building the right platform that will be able to house all of your stuff in a way and show up in a way that you want to show up online. And so I think it's
Yeah.
like it's a trial and error. I'm not, gonna shove Click down
Mm.
anyone's throat, but at the same time, it is pretty great. I've tried a lot of
Yeah.
platforms. Again, like I said, I won't name them all, but they just didn't work for me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's great that you've said that, and that wasn't a paid paid plug.
It's not,
But
yeah,
no, I mean, we see it time and time again, like with the time, and even me from obviously, we spoke about my background before this. I was a coach. Before that, I was an athlete, and even with the coaching element, it's the time element. Like I'll touch upon it now. We're just about to release something called Click Concierge, which actually gets you X amount of hours of VA time on top of your business. So 10 hours, 15 hours a week across the business, not just tied to Click. Because the amount of coaches that we've had this last year go, oh man, have you got anyone that can help with customer service? Or have you got anyone that can help with just my research? So we're launching it. We're going to just beta test it just to see how it is. And is it scalable? I don't know, but it's definitely something that coaches need. So regardless of whether it scales, that's what we're looking at. But with your content piece, I noticed you do stuff on LinkedIn. You've mentioned Substack, which I hadn't even seen. There's YouTube videos. How do you go about how do you get it done? Like, have you got a schedule, or is it just it pops in your head?
I'm like balls to the wall. I just go. Like I am a worker bee. I will say I don't operate normal. Like I really love that is like the piece that I love. So it is very difficult for me to relinquish that
Yeah,
because I love the creation of content. Like I think it's the
yeah,
coolest thing, and I have tried
yeah,
a bunch of stuff, Now I'm at a place where I feel like I can relinquish it because I'm like, okay, I
yeah,
got my things down, but again, your voice is so important. So I think finding what works for you. Do not do all platforms. That is, if I
yeah.
could do some stuff over, I would say that. Do not focus on all platforms. Figure out which platforms work for your business and go all in,
Mm.
on that. Like that
Yeah,
is the most important thing, like that I
yeah,
have found. I started kind of, like I said, fire hose. And I
yeah,
was like, I'm going to show up everywhere. Wrong move, because some things worked and some things didn't. So I was spending a lot of time doing things. And then I would say, figure out how to automate some things. There's a lot of incredible tools out there, especially now with AI. So many
yeah,
tools that allow you to automate, maybe not all of it. I don't believe in automate
yeah.
all of your content. I actually
No.
think that's a terrible idea. It doesn't allow you to show up authentic, but there are ways to automate, components of it. And so, like,
Mm.
let's say you put out, I'm just going to make this up. Let's say you put out one video, one post, and then you have like a quote. Okay, automate all your quotes. You don't need to show up on that. So figure out like what works for your business, which platform works for your business, and also like who are you targeting and where are they going to be? Because
Yeah,
maybe LinkedIn is the only place you need to show up. That's okay. And
yeah,
then once you hire help, then they can do some of the other platforms just to spread your visibility. But I would say that's
yeah,
a takeaway that I wish someone gave me early. It's not to show up everywhere. But I also knew how important it was to build authority. And I wanted, by the time you search my name, I wanted me to come up in a way where it was just my stuff,
yeah,
because everyone knows me for being, the head of talent of X business,
yeah,
right? And I needed to shift that. I needed to grow
yeah.
in my new version, And so
Yes.
in order to do that, I had to show up. But you asked how, and it's really like I just do it. Like I'm scheduled. So my days are
Yeah.
very scheduled. Like I time block.
Tell us about your day.
Oh, I am like I live to my calendar, and I only have a certain amount of hours because I'm a single mom. So
Yeah,
my kids are in school and I focus those
yeah,
hours very heavily. So I don't take personal calls, during
yeah,
those hours. And I think that's the differentiator. A lot of times we kind of get sucked into stuff. People call us, oh, I just want to talk for a few minutes. And then a few minutes is an hour, they've now taken care of your time. So I don't do that, and I'm very religious about that because
Yeah.
I'm one person. So I need to be able to show up. And then the other thing I would say is just being consistent. Even if
Yeah.
you only have 20% to give that day, that's still consistent. But you got to
Hmm.
show up daily for your business, and
Yeah.
then when you get to a place where you've made a little money, you can figure out, okay, what can I relinquish? Like, what are these like smaller tasks that I don't need to do anymore? But
Yeah.
you get to decide that. That's the beauty of us being entrepreneurs. We get to decide.
Totally. That's the power of it. And I think what's interesting now is we 100% live in a world of this. I don't want to call it attention, because it's
It
more
is.
than that. It is attention, but if I think about, I used to own gyms, right? You would have multiple ways of really creating lead generation and getting people through the doors. And yes, you can now, but obviously we now live in a world where content and, like you said, that authority, that brand is it's 10x,
Yes.
and so founders like me that I'd rather not be creating content, if I'm fully honest, because I'm like a person that gets dragged into certain things, but it's super important. And so trying to find that message is the thing that sort of moves the needle. But for you then, would you say, because you've got such a finite amount of time, are you creating content? Is it daily, or is it on a Tuesday and a Thursday I get it done? Or
So it used to be daily in the beginning, because I was still learning and finding my rhythm, But now it's a couple days a week, and my content is different, right? So I'll do the content that I post that are no non-video, and like even reels, but that don't include me. And then
Mhm.
I do
Yeah.
a lot of my recording for my podcast. I batch record. And so, like,
Okay.
people's episodes might not release for 2 months because
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
But I'm again one person. So I have to do what works for me in order for me to show up
For
in my
sure.
fullest capacity, And so
Yeah.
that's my biggest thing is I want to always show up in my fullest capacity, whatever I'm doing. So if I'm creating
Yeah.
content, that's exactly what I'm doing. If I'm writing, I tend to write at night. So once my kids are down
Yeah.
and the house is quiet and
Yeah.
I don't have any more calls, I love writing at that time. So I usually do my
Yeah.
long form writing in the evening. And I also like will tinker. That's my tinkering time. So I like to learn new tools, new products, to see different things. Like I use that time then because
Yeah.
I think that's also important because we're in this world of AI that's constantly evolving. We have to keep
So
evolving too.
fast.
It's so
Yeah.
fast. And I think it's faster than they even thought it would be. Like I don't think anyone can predict this. Like it is,
No.
I mean, just the amount of users, the amount of people using it, how it's, I mean, all the apps that hit the market, because you're
Yeah.
now able to build, I mean, it's just insane. So
And the
I
content,
think,
content ones as well. Now it's
oh yeah,
crazy.
it's just finding your stride though. And so I am again religious about my calendar, but I tend to operate in a way that like if it's not giving me energy, I'm not going to do it.
Hmm.
So I do things that give me energy. So I love creating
Yeah.
content. You don't like it, you shouldn't do it. You should get someone else to do it. And then
Do you
just
know what
know
yeah, no, I know. I don't mind doing it. I
yeah,
sometimes get that content block. I
yeah,
think, once I'm in a flow, I don't mind it.
yeah.
But there are times where, yeah, that content block, and then suddenly I'm speaking to engineers or whatever it might be. Do you ever get a content block? Any advice for sort of coaches that
Yeah,
are
I do.
starting off online? Like, what would you advise for
I
that?
do. I get a content block and then I go back to what gives me energy and also like where I get my creativity from. And so for me, that's nature. So I just get
Hmm.
into nature. I am a true nature girl. I don't dress like a nature girl, but I am a nature girl. I love nature. So
Okay.
I get
So you
into
go for
nature.
a walk, or
Oh yeah, I go for walks, I go for hikes. I love to just sit, like
yeah,
I will just sit on a, plot of grass or go stand near a
yeah,
tree, get my energy from trees. I
yeah,
love just being outside. And I think like that's where I get a lot of my creativity. And I'll just, start talking. I don't bring my phone, but I'll just remember like certain things I see or certain, things that come
mhm,
up for me. And I'm like, okay, I'll, file that in my Rolodex, my mental Rolodex.
yeah,
And then as soon as I come in, I might get something or I might not. But that's my way of like channeling it. And then I meditate. So I get a lot of my creativity like when I'm meditating and praying. And so I
Yeah.
pray to God, but then I
Yeah.
also channel, my ancestors,
Yeah.
and I'm
Yeah.
what would they be doing? How do they want me to show
Ha-
up? Because I know I'm my ancestors' wildest dream. I'm living the life, that
Yeah.
they want me to live, showing up in my full capacity, like, being able
Yeah.
to say yes to things and no to things,
And
just
doing
in that
things. Yeah.
simplicity in doing things, yeah, and building, in a way
Yeah.
that I know that they had the ability to do, but they just weren't able to.
Yeah, it's super powerful. That I think it's the pressure on the content block. Sometimes some people get, they get into this block and then they're like, oh my God, maybe I'll do a LinkedIn post, and then they start writing and they're like, oh, that sounds terrible.
No,
And it's just
release
this
it.
pressure. Hmm.
Just release it. Like, and I think because we're always holding on, we're always like force functioning stuff. That is the time to completely reboot. So, however you reboot, everybody reboots different. Think of a computer. You can't force a computer to do certain things when it doesn't want to do it. If your
Yeah.
computer has that like death wheel, you can't
Yeah.
force it. You have to reboot it. That's
Yeah.
the content. We are the death wheel
Yeah.
sometimes, so we have to
Yeah.
reboot. So what do you do to
Yeah.
reboot? Sometimes people go for a swim, whatever you do, but it always comes back to you. Everything comes
Yeah.
back to you. So if you're
Yeah.
pouring into you, that's when you're able to pour out. But you can tell when you're not pouring into you. That's when stuff gets stagnant. That's when things start piling up. You haven't been pouring into yourself. So however you pour into yourself, I do it in small ways, but also do it in big ways. Like I'll go buy
Yeah.
something, that I'm like, I've had my eye on that for a while. Or I might go take a road trip, just driving in the car and being with my kids and that energy, like, so you just have to figure out what works for you, but pour
There's
back
something
into.
about energy, something about environment, isn't there? When you change your environment,
Yes.
I used to, for sure, even with going with clients in the previous
Mhm.
profession, traveling, you're away, you're in different environments, different air, just different energy, and you come up with so much.
Yeah.
And as an entrepreneur, it's so empowering.
And
And I
maybe you
think,
don't
yeah, there's
have
something to it.
Yeah, maybe you don't have the means to travel, So do day trips in your area, like just road
Hmm.
trip somewhere. Or what I like to call a road trip in my house. I have like four or
Yeah.
five different areas that I just move. So sometimes you're sitting in a particular place. Maybe it's your office, maybe it's your dining room
Yeah.
table, wherever it is. Like, and that place is not giving you energy. Get your butt up and move. Like, move the energy around in your body and then go find a new spot. And then you might just that little shift, you're like, oh, okay, I'm now feeling different, Like, but the energy staying stuck is what, I mean, anything that's stuck is not good. So think
No.
about that, your energy. Like when you're feeling
Yeah.
stuck, move. That's what I coach
That's
my
super
kids.
interesting. I'm going to try that. I'm going to try that. If I'm
Yeah,
sat here and
move.
I'm like, I'm
Yeah,
just not
move.
getting it, I'm going to go,
Yeah. I have
yeah,
4 or 5 in my
yeah,
house and I love it. I'm like, it's so great. And when I need to move, I move. And I usually move like at least twice a day minimum.
yeah.
But it sometimes it needs to be 3 or 4. And I have my little spots and
Wow.
I'm like, okay, this is great. Sometimes I stand, sometimes I sit, sometimes I like, plop on the couch. Like it just you gotta figure out what works.
Yeah. And so 2026,
Yeah.
what's the sort of, how do you see the world of online coaching changing with AI? Do you
Mm.
think that anything is drastically going to change this year? Do you feel that coaches need to be having AI and somehow, are there any tools? How do you see that sort of actual, the specifics of 2026 AI online coaching?
Great question. And I've been thinking about this often because of AI and how quickly it's just evolving every industry, not just the coaching industry. But I think the best coaches will be the ones that get ahead of it, that are already incorporating it in their business, finding ways to optimize whatever they're doing, and also helping their clients use it. Like whether it's creating, workouts online and then tweaking them with your personal lived experience,
Yeah.
like, but being able to move faster because that's where we're at right now. But I do think the human element will still be there. Like, so, I have some people who are like, oh my God, AI is going to, remove all coaching. I don't believe that. I don't believe that at
Yeah.
all because people need humans. Like,
Oh,
yes, AI is great, but let me tell you, if you're not prompting your AI properly, you're going to get really stagnant answers. You're going to get the most basic answers. So it needs to be prompted correctly in order for you to get the best outcome,
Yeah.
and I think the human element, we need community. So I think it's going to be really important to figure out like where you can use AI, how it can serve your business, but also helping others, welcome it in and being honest about it. That's the biggest
Yeah.
thing. It's like we're not going to be able to operate the way that we did a few years ago. Coaches are not going to be able to scale their business the way that they did a few years ago. It's going to be completely different. And so I think it's, figuring out how you're going to use it best for you and then running forward,
Yeah.
because how I'm using it right now is figuring out like how I can help leaders, like more leaders, and not just doing one-to-one calls with me. So I've created my own AI, that I'm going to be releasing this year, so people can prompt that, and then I have it
Yeah.
where I'll provide them a lot of the prompts that they can pull the information, because I'm again one person, so I think it's thinking of it like that, like what are ways that I can optimize, my business, but also continue to educate myself, because AI is moving so fast and there's so many tools. One tool that works for you last year might not work this year.
I mean, it might not be going because, a lot of these AI tools are just dying and, Google's bringing something out. But, do you have anything that helps you with AI with, say, content? Does it help you? Like for us, we for sure great for creating captions. We'll take the
Yeah.
video transcript, we'll create captions or just get ideas for captions. Is there anything like that that you're currently doing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also use it for outlining. So I use it to summarize my calls. Like I used to in the past take notes, now I use
Yeah.
AI note taker. And that's just helped me tremendously, because then I'm able to stay like fully focused on the call. And, they get all of me and not like, okay, as I'm typing, I'm listening. Like now I try and find ways like that. Like, how can I use that to
Yeah.
optimize? And then it'll summarize, and if it doesn't do a great summary, then I will then summarize it. I use it for my podcast, when I'm, for like all the YouTube writing, and the captions and the descriptions and things like that. Like I use that, because that helps me move faster. So I find
Yeah.
ways throughout, my business to optimize what I'm doing and allow me to run faster. Because I think like
Yeah.
right now, as we're building, you have some coaches who are further along on your platform than even myself. Like, we're all racing, towards this particular destination, but and everyone's at different stages. And so I think the ones who are going to survive are the ones who actually embrace what's happening, and find
Absolutely.
ways to use it to their advantage and not work against it.
Yeah. I think what we see for sure with when we see success or what coaches then have labeled as success on Click is similar to yourself. They understand their superpowers, they understand how they add value, but they also have that strategic angle of how potentially they're going to transition that online business, whether it be that, they're just using the Click platform that they've launched as a way to get them to higher ticket offerings, or whether it's just like to create that authority piece. I'm just going to keep showing up in my own app or in the digital storefront. We definitely see that. And I think some coaches come and they may have been okay at creating content, but then they're not quite sure on how to actually put that into a business. So it's super interesting every day,
It
with
is,
what we
but I
see.
think embracing that, like embracing that uncomfortability, like the coaches who can like stay uncomfortable throughout this whole thing are going to be the ones that last, because it's really building up your tolerance for all the discomfort. Like what
Yeah.
works right now in January 2026 might not even be relevant in September,
Yeah.
So as long as you're willing to constantly evolve, and don't get me wrong, like most of the basics are going to be the same, like,
Yeah.
but I think the more you can get uncomfortable, like I think that's what's really helped me tremendously is I'm fine with discomfort. Like I have a really
Yeah.
high pain tolerance. for discomfort. And, and I think my former track and field days, like
Oh God, yeah.
yeah, my coach used to say, she always be like, don't dog my workout. She's like, preparation prevents poor performance. And
Yes.
we would have to prepare. And I mean, she would run us into the ground,
Yeah.
but what that did for me, I'm so grateful for it because I understand that pain is temporary,
Yeah.
And if you can get past that and that every season there are going to be some highs and some lows, and you find your rhythm in the high and low, you'll always survive. You'll always be great.
I think there's something with sport, right? I mean, I'll never, I live by it, the whole saying of winners and losers have the same goal. It's just that winner is prepared or strategy or whatever it is. But I love the uncomfortable, being uncomfortable, enjoy being uncomfortable.
Yeah,
Or,
I'm like, get comfortable with the uncomfortable.
yeah,
Like if you can do that, like I'm telling you, it's and I think too, like because there's so many highs and lows in our business and what we're doing, like that's the uncomfortable. A lot of people can't
yeah,
handle that pressure, and they're
yeah,
so afraid of failure. I'm not. Like
yeah,
I embrace
yeah,
failure. I think it's cool when I fail. I'm like, okay, dope, amazing. Like now I get to like learn from that. I
yeah,
learned, but if I didn't try, how would I even
yeah,
know? Like how would I continue to
yeah,
grow? So
yeah, yeah. It's tough. And so I guess some more, not rapid fire questions, but more questions around coaching. So what's the best piece of advice for a new online coach, whether they've been coaching for years one to one or but they're now transitioning online? What's the best piece of advice?
the best piece of advice is get support. You
Yeah.
cannot do it alone. Like, and you might not be able to hire people, but there's a lot of people who are just willing to help. I'm myself included. I take all kinds of calls. I carve out time every week just to give
Yeah.
back. So finding
Yeah.
people who will just pour into you because you're pouring so much out of yourself. It's very
Yeah.
important.
Okay. What is there a piece of tool, piece of tech or a tool that you couldn't live without?
Oh gosh. Oh my God, so many. I would say, okay, if I had to choose one, because there's a lot, but I really, really love Canva. I love Canva.
Okay.
It's one I
Yeah, it's
cannot live
amazing.
without. I use it for all of my businesses. So I would say Canva.
Yeah.
But
And
also I also love what is it? Oh my gosh, I'm gonna blank on it, and it's gonna come to me. It starts with a T. Tapala or I'm gonna figure it out. But it's
yeah.
basically a tool that allows me to create LinkedIn content. And so
Okay.
I think it's like Taplio or something like that. It's
Okay.
Taplio, I believe it is. But I love this tool. It's the coolest thing ever. And it allows you
Yeah.
to create LinkedIn content and then schedule it and then walk away,
Oh,
but it
amazing.
also allows you to get inspired by others. So you're able to see what other creators create. And then you can, use some of their templates or, if they got, 1,000 likes or something, you can then kind of recreate that to your brand. So it really helps you
Amazing.
in a lot of ways. Oh,
I'm checking that out and I'll put it in the
well, you
show
have to.
notes
I'm going to
for
send it to
people.
you. I'm sure I'm butchering
Yeah.
it. Apologies to the company, but I love you.
Well, yeah, you're using it. What's the biggest myth in online coaching? What's the myth that people?
Mm, that you have to show up everywhere. You don't. I know we talked about it a little bit earlier, but you don't. You really need to figure out like how you want to show up, and then go
Mhm.
forth. And maybe that's only
Yeah.
one platform. That's okay too. If you don't like creating video, guess what? You don't have to create video. You can get what is it, an avatar, using
Yeah.
something like agent, and
Yeah.
and create your own avatar that can create video for you. Now you don't have to create video. Like
Yeah. It's
you
crazy.
get to decide. And so
Yeah.
I would say like just know that you don't have to show up everywhere. Show up where
Yeah.
what gives you energy and where the people you're speaking to are.
Okay. Last one is what one book, podcast, resource would you say has shaped your journey?
My gosh. Okay. Let me see. That is like asking me who my favorite child is. Like, I'm an avid reader. So I've read thousands of books. Come on, that's
Yeah.
horrible. Okay. I knew you were gonna do this to me. Let's see. I'm gonna give you two.
Give me two. Yeah, go on.
Okay, good. I'm like, I gotta give you two. Okay, so I'm gonna give you two books that I recommend often. Okay, so what shaped my leadership is Radical Candor by Kim Scott.
Okay.
Incredible, incredible book. Love that book. But it is a very much a leadership book. An understanding, like first again you, but being able to be radically honest with your whoever you're leading. But doing it in a way that is kind. You don't have to be
Yeah.
cruel. So
Yeah.
I love that book. And then I would say, oh gosh, I knew you were going to do this to me. I really love the Four Agreements. It's something I live by.
Okay.
It's just an incredible book. And but I also love The Alchemist. So I mean,
I don't know the Four Agreements. I don't know the Four Agreements. What's that? Well, there's obviously Four Agreements, but what is it?
oh my gosh, no, I'm not even going to tell you. You need to read it. It is like a Bible. You need to read it. But there's two out of the Four Agreements. Two that I hone in on heavily is be impeccable with my word. I'm impeccable with my word. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. If I say I'm not going to do it, you better believe I ain't going to do it. So
Yeah.
and the other one is like don't allow things to get to you. Like I mentioned this earlier, like I don't really care how people see me. Like I care how my creator sees me, but I don't worry about anyone else's opinions. But I
Yeah.
think we all get caught up in that. We get caught up in the external validation and people patting us on the back. Pat your own self on the back. So
Yeah.
that's another agreement that I live by. Like I don't really worry about anyone's opinions of me. Like it's not even my business. Like what people think
Yeah.
of. Like you go find your people, like, but you have to show up authentically in order to do that. So I have attracted just incredible, extraordinary people. I mean, we're just mentioning my last guest I had on my podcast, Marion Jones,
Yeah.
because I show up authentically. I'm not looking for validation. I validate
Yeah.
myself through the eyes of God.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where it's, that's the superpower.
Yeah,
Um,
it is. But it took,
yeah.
I wasn't always like this, like we grow, we evolve. But when I
Yeah.
realized that people, we're all just doing our best, you know, and even people who are hurting others, they're everyone's struggling with something in their life. None of us are perfect. We're not even supposed to show up perfect. We're supposed to show up imperfectly. And by showing up imperfectly, we are already perfect in the eyes of God. So
Yeah. And then that content the authenticity comes through, right?
it does.
Yeah.
It does, but you have
Yeah.
to get comfortable with yourself, and I think a lot of the teachings that I have found that have been just extraordinary, they all point back to you. They all point back to understanding yourself deeper, fuller, and I talk about radical candor, Kim Scott, shout out to you, but also you have to get to radical acceptance. That's the other book I would recommend for people. It's getting to a point of radical acceptance of yourself, you know, healing the parts of you that need healing. Like I went on a healing journey for a decade. And then now I have
Yeah.
a course that's on the Click platform that, focuses
Yeah.
on that. It's 12 steps, path to wholeness and purpose. And
Yeah.
again, our purpose isn't one thing, it's multiple things, like in
Yeah.
different seasons of our life. Sometimes our purpose is us, is to heal the parts so we can show up with a lot more clarity, wholeness, and fullness, so we can make a bigger impact. But if you don't do that, you stay the same. We're not meant to stay the
Yeah.
same. Nothing in going back to nature, nothing in nature stays the same. We're
No.
not supposed to either.
And that's what, I think so many people struggle with.
They do.
Not just, obviously we've been talking about coaches, but just in life, stagnation and what's going on. But wow, super interesting and helpful to me personally as well. But I guess
Yay.
so. Where can people follow you, see more of
Yeah.
you?
Oh
Give
my
us a
God.
couple of channels.
Okay, so many channels, but I would say the best channels are LinkedIn, Instagram, also on YouTube. I have my podcast, Sunday Soul Day, airs
Yeah.
every Sunday with an incredible guest. Sometimes I do individual episodes as well, just with myself, but you can find me there, Spotify, all of the audio platforms, big major ones. But the best place to reach me is definitely, I would say LinkedIn and Instagram, and also on Click.
Yeah, and also Substack.
Yeah, in Substack. And you can download my app now because it's in the App Store, which is incredible. So
There
thank
you
you
go.
for staying in between. And it's called Leadership Garden.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes, Leadership Garden. .joinclick.io. There you
Yeah.
go for the
Thank
web
you.
version. Well,
Thank
thank you so much, Damesha, for being on the
you.
show and sharing so many knowledge bombs. I think
Yeah.
leadership is hard. Scaling a
Yeah.
business online is super hard, and I think the one thing that everyone can take away is obviously working on themselves and getting true to that, because that's going to help with so many things, from content to even leading. But thank you again.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure to connect with you.